we might get going, Sarah.
Yeah, I'd say go ahead there, Ellen. Great.
Okay, great. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to our seminar for getting ready for retirement. My name is Ellen McElroy, and I'm one of the regional managers here in Irish Pensions and Finance, and I'm also one of the financial planners. Now, I'm working with the company for over 13 years now at this stage, and I'm going to be your hostess with the mostess for this evening. So look, before we get on to the content of the evening, I want to talk to you about, what we're hoping to get out of the evening. Now, I know some of you may have been on these seminars before, and we've been doing these since 2010. We typically ran these in hotels dotted around the country. And look, there was always a bit of a limitation to the numbers that could attend. Now, COVID put a little bit of manners on us, and we found that by running the webinar, we can facilitate everybody up and down the country. And I suppose recording the content as well allows those unable to attend to digest the information that we're going to present here this evening. Look, folks, the objective of this evening is to present the information so you can decide for you what is important in the run-up for your own retirement. I suppose what we find with clients is that these decisions that you make in the run-up to retirement can have a massive impact on the rest of your life, essentially. So I suppose it's really key that you get a clear understanding what is really, really important and what you'd like to see happen for yourself when you eventually get to down tools and put the feet up. Okay, so what I'd like to do is, just run through our key speakers briefly. So there's myself, Ellen, then I have a regional manager and senior advisor, financial planner, Neil McGroarty. We have Michelle Farrelly, senior financial planner, and Jeff Lau, senior financial planner. Look, before we get on to, I suppose, our agenda for this evening, I'd like to just go through a couple of housekeeping bits and pieces, all right? We're hoping to keep the webinar to circa an hour and 15. All right. We've loads and loads of questions that have come in, Sarah, during the week from yourselves, and we're going to try and get through as many of those questions as possible and deal with those queries, concerns that you might have. Look, our advice would be, take notes. Like we will be sending you a copy of the slide deck after the seminar, but I suppose tune into the areas that you feel are relevant to you, take down your notes, and again, we can address these going forward. The slides will also cover a lot of the key questions that you might have. If you feel the areas were not covered this evening, look, we can make and arrange an appointment with one of our financial planners to tease out all of those extra areas that you want covered. Look, the chat function will be off for the main bulk of the webinar, but we'll let you know when this is off. Now, we're running a competition this evening, and we're going to put up a question about some of the content we've covered during the webinar. So, keep an eye out. The person who puts in the right answer into the chat box wins a €100 one for all voucher. So again, just keep an eye on the content of this evening. I'd like to thank also Sarah Connolly, our marketing manager and producer, who put all this content together. So look, I think IPF would come to a close if we didn't have Sarah Connolly. When she goes on holidays, it's panic station around here, And look, fun fact about Sarah Connolly. Sarah Connolly does the best version of Valerie you've ever heard, folks. So again, meet her at a karaoke bar. This is her go-to position. So look,
I'm no Amy Winehouse, but I give it a go.
So thank you, Sarah. Look, our agenda is as follows for this evening. We're going to go through part one. Neil is going to bring us through this, which is 1 to 5 years out from retirement, building a plan for your retirement. Where will you stand financially in retirement, and budgeting for your retirement? A lot of questions in on this tonight, folks. Again, we'll try and get through as many questions as possible. Part two, Michelle Farrelly is going to talk to us about getting financially prepared for your retirement, making the most of your retirement income, and then we're going to talk to you about a couple of surveys that we've conducted recently, and that useful information for anyone to tune into. And then we're going to look at the content that Jeff is going to bring us through part three, in retirement. So your options for your retirement income, useful information, and then what happens next, folks, and then the most important thing, one for all voucher competition. All right. So look, what I'd like to do is just, I suppose, just to get everybody warmed up for this evening, I just want to go through a couple of little, questions just to kind of get people interacting. So Sarah, can we open up the chat box for this? So I suppose
we're good to go there.
Good to go. Great. Okay, so folks, if you're not familiar with the chat box, it should be down kind of in the middle of your screen. You just click into that and pop in your answers. Look, so for every one person retired today, there are 6 working. In 2050, how many people will be working for every one person retired? 3, 1. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so Sarah, our answer is 2 to 1.
Answer is 2.
2. Okay, so look, folks, what does that tell us? I suppose we have a lot more people working today supporting our retirees. Fast forward, that is going to be greatly reduced. So question number 2, life expectancy has greatly increased. How many years do you think the average person is expected to live after they retire? So pop your answers into the chat box there, folks. 20, 20, 20, 20. Very optimistic here tonight. We're all going to live longer. So the correct answer is, of course, 20 years. And I know we were at a pension summit recently, and actually they're expecting the life expectancy for us to live to 100. So there you go. We're an aging population. And then we're going to move on to question number 3. So what is the current rate of inflation in Ireland at the minute? So do you want to pop your answers into the chat box there? 8.5, 7, 9.2, 7, 9.2, 7.3, 9.5, 7.3, 8.5, 8.5. So Sarah, the correct answer is?
8.5.
Okay, and this is something, again, folks, very, very popular topic for this evening, and something, again, that's on the news day in, day out. It is the value of our money and the cost of goods and services in this country. So we move on to the next slide, Sarah, please, if that's okay. So why save for retirement? Okay, so what percentage of your salary will revenue allow you claim tax relief on through pension contributions at age 60? So again, if you want to pop your answers into the chat box there, folks. 40, 40, 50, 50, 40, 40, 30, 20, 40. Okay, so the correct answer there, Sarah, is so 40%. Very good. Okay, so revenue will allow you to claim tax relief on pension contributions up to 40% cap on that from the age of 60 plus. Okay, and last question before we move on to our first speaker of this evening. What is the average interest rate given on a deposit account? So anyone has to guess what the post office is giving at the moment? And you pop your answers into the chat box again, folks. 1, none, 0, 0.25, 0.01, 0.52, 0.1, 3%, none. Okay, so our answer, Sarah, is 0.15.
0.125 and 15, yeah.
Okay, okay, do we do any better in the banks, Sarah, I wonder? So guys, would you hazard a guess what rates the banks are giving at the moment on average? 0.1, 0, 0, 0, 0.1, 1.5, 0, a lot of zeros here, 0.25, 0, 0.5, 0, 0.1. And the correct answer is 0.1%. So again, folks, what is this telling us? I suppose, look, at the rate of inflation and the rate that we're getting on our deposits in an account, we're in the middle of a perfect storm. But look, we're going to talk to you about all of this later. Hugely popular question at the moment, and lots coming in on this as well. So we're going to try and get through as much of these questions as possible. So look, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker of this evening, Mr. Neil McGorty. So Neil is going to bring us through building a financial plan for retirement. Now, Neil is with the company 11 years, and a lot of you on here tonight are very familiar with Neil. Neil is extremely experienced in dealing with our glide path clients coming up to retirement. And also Neil is heavily invested in the training of the staff and teams here in Irish Pensions and Finance. Neil's motto is, what is it, Neil?
A plan, not a policy, Ellen.
Plan, not a policy. And look, I want to give you an interesting fact about Neil. So Neil sold his first life insurance plan when he was 7 years of age. So there you go. So it was your destiny, Neil. You were destined to do this job. But look, thanks a million for joining us, Neil, tonight. But look, well, let's get straight to it, I suppose. Look, we've a question in here from Carmel from the Civil Service, okay? Look, Neil, what should I be doing to prepare for retirement?
So for Carmel, I suppose the big thing I would say is to make a plan, okay? Is to make a plan and to be aware a little bit about what's coming down the track from an income stream from your job and what you're actually going to need. So that would be the advice I'd be saying to Carmel. Okay,
so have a plan. And what does that mean, Neil, when you say have a plan? For what and what are the specifics?
So having a plan is in relation to how much you're going to need, having a plan in relation to what sort of income what you're going to need and what you're going to get. So I suppose maybe to look here, if you look at the slide here, most people here this evening are public sector employees, and they're going to get an income from their job. They're going to get a once-off tax-free lump sum. I know we've heard on a couple of occasions, Ellen, where do I get that lump sum on a couple of occasions? Unfortunately not. It's a once-off sum.
Oh, as opposed to once a year, Neil. Yeah.
As opposed to once a year, Ellen. Yeah. And then, God forbid, if you're off work long term, there's illness benefits that are there. Should you be off, things like a death and service benefit as well. So if something was to happen to you, will be paid to your family or next of kin. And there'd be an income for your loved one and your kids if something was to happen to you while you were working. Now, when you retire, though, you'll only really have your income. Okay, so your other benefits will be gone. But if you are married and have children and they're still dependent, there's an income and an income, for them as well.
Okay, yeah, so that's one of our questions from Kathleen from the Department of Justice, look, inquiring about her lump sum and what pension will she get. So this is kind of linking into the benefits they have through work, Neil. Am I understanding that correctly?
Exactly, Ellen. Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so look, interesting what you said earlier. I suppose, you know, that outside of the pension and lump sum, everything else really stops when you get to retirement. What happens if somebody passes away before retirement?
So if somebody passes away before retirement, Ellen, they'd get a death and service benefit which would be payable to their next of kin or nominated person or to their wife or husband. And also there could be a widows and orphans pension that'd be paid, or spouse and children as referred to. Now, some women did have the option of opting out of that in the 80s, but majority of our clients would actually have that benefit in place. Okay,
so for those that did opt out, then essentially the pension kind of dies with them is the current situation. Okay. Look, moving on then, Neil. A lot of questions in relation to the pension. Anne-Marie is asking, public sector pension scheme, Class D, what are my entitlements? Talk to us about what that means.
It's a good question, yeah, from Anne-Marie. So I suppose if you're a D-stamp employee or D-stamp PRSI payer, that would mean that you get your full benefits from your employer when you retire. Okay, so that would be a pension and a lump sum. Now, if you're on an A class, which is sort of the next sort of segment, which is anybody really post April 1995, you also get your employer pension, you get your lump sum also, but you also get a state pension, and that's linked to the state pension age, which at the moment has had a few different variables and a few different goalpost movements over the last couple of years.
Okay, so that's one of the questions from Rosalind. What's the difference between the classes? So what's under the bonnet of that, Neil, essentially? So anybody that would say be on the D, B and C1 stamp versus the A stamp, what's the difference, the main differences here?
Good question. So I suppose the main key difference is that there's a state pension payable on the A stamp, while your full pension will be payable if you're on the B class or the D class of PRSI. So if an individual retired at 60, hypothetically, there might be an income gap between the time that they've retired up until the time that their state pension is payable if they're on an A stamp. While if they're on a D or a B stamp, they might actually get their full pension payable at that particular point in time.
Okay, and look, in your experience, Neil, like what can be the impact of being on a different scheme to anyone sitting here tonight?
Big impact, really, I suppose, could be like an income gap, as we're saying there. But if I can point something to the slides here, but it depends on the point that you joined. Really, what's happened with the public sector pension scheme is there was the best possible scheme pre-95. There's the April 95 to 2004. There's the 2004 to 2013, and then you get the post-13. So it was a better scheme, if you think previous, and it's sort of come down in rungs over the last couple of years. It's still very good, but I suppose the benefits have changed in relation to sort of state pension payable and sort of how the contributions are paid.
So for anybody sitting here tonight, I suppose to really tune into the particular scheme that applies to them and the rules surrounding it. So that's going to have an impact on decisions, I suppose, they make in the run up to retirement. Why, in your opinion, are the schemes getting worse as you go down the line?
I think it's something that you alluded to earlier on, Ellen, is that we're living longer. We're living longer in our life, and there's not enough money coming in to be able to pay the money that's going out, that's really coming into the say, exchequer. So again, I suppose from funding, I know we're going to talk about a little bit later on, but taking a bit of ownership over this and taking a bit of control, if you feel that you're not going to get really what you're going to need from your pension from your employer, you do have options, and you do have options to supplement them.
So tuning back into, what we did in the survey earlier on, that there's more workers supporting retirees now than there will be down the line. Okay.
Yeah.
Look, question in from Tony from Westmead Co. He would like to, have an explanation of how his lump sum is calculated at retirement.
Okay, so to Tony, so about his lump sum, it's basically based on his years of service. So his years of service and his final salary at retirement. So we've done an example here. So if Tony is lucky to have 40 years of service, and if to use a salary of €50,000, effectively he get 1.5 times that amount of 75,000 as a tax-free sum. Now, if Tony has reduced years of service, so let's say hypothetically, if he's 20 years to this illustration here, he would get half that. Okay, so he get half it as a lump sum. So that's sort of how it works and formulated from his employer.
Okay, so when we're looking at the lump sum, because again, it's a hugely popular topic, and you hear about the tax-free amount that you get when you retire. I suppose, is there any wiggle room on these lump sums from the superannuation scheme?
It's a good question, Ellen. So I suppose I know something we're going to chat about later on, that Michelle's going to talk about non-pensionable income and things like inflation being so high. We've got certain different ways that we can actually look to increase it, even if you have your full service. But if you've got reduced years of service, say again, this example of 20,000 to 20-year service here, it can be quite a prudent plan to do is actually set up an additional contribution, give yourself the full tax-free lump sum from the employer. From the funding level, not from your employer. You'll have to sort of fund it yourself.
Okay, so to use an example, say Tony could have a full 40 years service, and his example would be the green column, and then you could have Mary that job shares for 40 years, so she's only credited with 20, so her example would be the red column.
Exactly, Ellen. Exactly.
Right. Okay. Teresa from the Department of Social Protection is asking, she's wondering if it's better to put a lump sum into ABCs just before retiring to get tax relief rather than a few years in advance.
It's a good question. It's a really good question, to be honest with you. And it's something that we'd see a lot in practice. People talk, you might hear this phrase, the last minute ABC. I'm looking to do a last minute ABC. And to be honest with you, sometimes it can be the right course of action, but that's only on a sometime basis. And because what it might do is it might actually take away from an option that you might have to be able to build up a bigger retirement fund, because you've only got a certain amount you can do at that particular moment in time. So if there was more scope, or if there was an income gap, there was something that we need to be funded for, that opportunity is lost if it's just done on a last minute lump sum basis. So it is something you can do, but I would say, and I suppose it's maybe the big theme of what I'm going to be saying throughout the course of the slides here, is that get advice as early as you possibly can and find out exactly what you can do and find out exactly what you need and come up with a plan then. But
okay, so you don't want to be forced into a situation where there may be limitations in your last year that you could have taken advantage of in the previous years. Okay,
exactly, Ellen. Yeah.
Now look, Neil, just moving on, I suppose, to the pension. Eileen from the HSC is looking, what's my pension going to look like when I get to retirement? It's a big concern for a lot of people here tonight. The bread and butter, what am I going to be living on day to day? What's the with the different schemes, I suppose?
Okay, so in this example here, what we have is, if you look at the slides here, so we've used a salary of €50,000, and in the red column there, we have anybody's on sort of the pre-1995 scheme, and anybody post a 1995 scheme typically will be on the A stamp. So that's what we have here. So if you've got full service, okay, the example we've used here is 40 years of service, and your salary is €50,000, you're on the B or the D1, effectively your pension would be half of the 50,000 if that was your final salary, your pensionable salary. But if you were on the A stamp, as we spoke about earlier on as well, effectively you're getting a piece from your employer, which would this be that amount there, just over €11,000. But the balance will come from the state pension. But the state pension is a little bit down the road. So if an individual is retired at 60, hypothetically, there could be some form of allowances coming from the state, but your actual state pension isn't payable until you're 66, or depends on when.
Okay. Okay, so I suppose your best case scenario really would be to have your full 40 years service built up, but your best case scenario is 50% of salary on the older. Okay, so you could be faced with a scenario where potentially you're retiring on a salary. If you're fall under the A1 stamp, that you jump to 25% of your income.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where typically could that be an issue? Again, for our clients sitting here tonight, Neil, could you give me an example of how that may or may not be an issue for them?
Sure. So I suppose where I would see it, like where it could be an issue, is if it's actually not going to be enough, Ellen. Like people will be of the view, look, I'll have half my income when I retire, but that might actually be enough. And if they're on their B or the D and they want to sort of take advantage of funding levels and actually give themselves a higher income in retirement. But the big sort of what we would see is the potential income gap that may be there for somebody who has aspirations of retiring early, especially if they're on the A class of RSI.
Okay.
If that is the case, then there could be an income gap that's been generated there, and which then could create issues down the road. Okay.
And even if you do have your full 40 years, are there still limitations on the income that you get or can get?
Not necessarily. Like you can still fund to a higher level. There's 2/3, I think, is a guideline that we would use in practice, where you can still fund up from an income perspective. So there are levels that you can still fund up to if you felt that you wanted to have more. But again, going back to the point around the making a plan tailored to the individual, rather than looking at the sort of general sort of slide here, finding out what you need, finding out what you have, and coming up with a plan then if needs be.
Okay, so look at the need and then come up with the plan based on the need. Okay, very good. I suppose, look, a question in here from Catherine from the HSC. Look, financial plan for retirement, again, hugely popular topic for this evening, but what other things should Catherine consider in the run up to retirement? So just moving on.
There's a couple of things that she could consider, to be honest with you. So one is around from pension, is from life cover. And our death and service benefit. So like I'm 37 years of age, I have an 8-year-old daughter and I have a 3-month-old puppy. So if that happens to me, I want to make sure that my loved ones are protected. But my mom and dad are in retirement years, and I'm 37, my sister's 35, and we're not financially dependent. So they might they might necessarily want to have cover in place at that point in time. As a public sector employee, your death and service benefit will be there up until that point in time anyway. But some people like to carry life cover into retirement, and some people don't. So again, getting advice, finding out what's suitable to you, what you need, and coming up with a solution.
Yeah, because we would hear this from clients all the time. Like they'd like to continue a little bit of life cover going into retirement to cover, I suppose, any expenses that might arise if they passed away, or money in place for the kids, or an extra buffer there. But it's very much down to the individual, I suppose, to stress test what they have versus what they'll continue to need.
Exactly, yeah.
How far out should you be looking at this, Neil? For anyone coming up to retirement, in your view?
I think that's kind of an open one, to be honest with you. I think at all stages, like your financial review, so whether you're 37 looking at your financial plan for the future, or whether you're 60 and about to retire in a couple of months' time, the earlier the better, if I'm totally honest. So, and having an understanding of what you're going to need and what you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw this into the mix, Neil. Again, this is a hugely popular. Loads of questions coming in on this. Paul from Washington wants to know. Look, income and tax planning in retirement. This is a bit of a complex area, but can you give us a bit of a guide through this, Neil?
Sure. Okay. So for Paul's question there, so like one thing I hear a lot of, and it's people would say to me, look, is this tax free? What can I do? But like in life, there's only 2 things that are certain, and taxes are one of them. I know, okay. But what happens is, though, when you get older, or when you're retiring, your income in retirement isn't going to be as much of what it was when you were full-time employee, hypothetically. So typically what you find is you may come down an actual tax band in retirement. So there are sort of channels that are there that you can utilize a little bit. And that's the point of the financial advice, of actually having, you know, a plan that's suited to you. But for Paul's question, unfortunately, I can't give him good news or bad news here, but I can tell him the news is that there is taxation in retirement. These are the current bans at the moment, so which recently increased it in the budget. But again, who knows what's down the road in relation to budgets, and so.
So I suppose, to use the previous example then, Neil, so somebody, you know, retiring at 50,000 drops to an income of 25,000. So, you know, if Paul fell into that bracket, then he could essentially, you know, draw down extra income at a lower rate of tax up to this particular threshold.
Exactly, Ellen. Exactly. Yeah. And in saying that as well, again, if somebody was in a position where their income was actually less than 18,000 euro per year, or if as a couple and one of them was older than 65, that they can actually have a total income of 36,000, and there's exemption limits that are there. So that is a channel that's there. But again, I suppose in practice, that's something that I suppose you need to get advice on whether it's something that you can fit into that bracket or not.
Okay, so much more generous allowances. Now that 18,000 and 36,000, what age did that kick in from, Neil?
65, Ellen.
65. Okay, very good. But I have a question in from Breach from Kilkenny. Okay, can I work after I retire? You know, part-time, and would that affect my pension? We get this all the time, you know.
That's a really good question, Breach. Yeah, we do, don't we, Ellen? So I suppose to answer the question is yes, of course you can work on. There's absolutely no issue. People can work on for as long as they want to work on. But obviously the tax code would still be there based on your income. So you'd have an income from, say, your part-time work, if you have a pension that you're claiming, or any other incomes that you have, that will be tax bad. But for Bridget's question, if what she means is can she continue to be an employee somewhere, or I'm not too, but yeah, it will depend on whether she's taking the pension from her job or not, and she can't go back as another employee back into the same employment and pay into the pension again. But
yeah, for sure.
Of course she can work on.
Yeah. So retiring, let's say, from the HSE or the county council, drawing down the pension, and wants to work part-time, say local shop or whatever, you know, that all of that goes into the tax pool then from revenues perspective.
Exactly, Ellen. Exactly, yeah. And we can have a certain amount of income before we start paying different tax at different threshold levels. So if you have a pension, if you have an income from your part-time work, as long as it's keeping below certain thresholds, you're below those tax bands.
Okay, but I suppose the main message here is if you're worried or if you're unsure, ask for some advice on this. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Now I like this one. Bernie from Kilkenny. Bernie, I'd love to be your child. So general advice on passing money to my kids. Okay. So, and this is a hugely popular one. But you know, what are your tips around this, Neil?
Okay, so for Bernie, if Bernie wants to gift any money to her children, there's certain bands and thresholds that are here. Okay, so we've got different groups, and so if it's your son or daughter, there's a limit of 335,000 that your children can inherit, or be gifted without falling into the inheritance tax issue, which is 33%. Now, in saying that, there is a nice channel that's there around the gift tax allowance where there's 3,000 euro can be gifted. Now, it doesn't matter the relationship to the individual. So if Bernie wants to give me 3,000 euro or you 3,000 euro, well, she can do so as well. And there's no inheritance tax. It's fully, there's no issue with that, Bernie, if you do want to do it. But that is a good channel, though. If the amount of money that Bernie would like to use to gift her children is greater than the 335, if she's doing it for a 10-year period, there's 30,000 that she's gifted to her son or daughter over that period of time.
Okay, so it's moving that asset out of her estate, and I suppose reducing any potential liability that may come down the line.
Correct.
I suppose these are the different brackets, the different thresholds that are in place at the minute. Again, I know they're subject to change, but you know, what's your view on them?
My view on them is, again, to get advice with this is something that I'd say, look, I can have a will made and speak to a solicitor, but I would say as well that there are options to alleviate some of the potential inheritance tax liability if you've discovered that there is going to be a liability, or if you're going to be gifting somebody. So do get advice on it. To absolutely get advice on it, because it's a nasty one, you know, like if there's a big estate that's been accumulated, pretty much a third of it could be offset or could be paid to revenue from
we've a question in from Mary from Cork. I've just paid a revenue bill on inheritance and I don't want my children in the same position. Help.
Okay. Mary, I don't know what the hell. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so if you've already paid it, Mary, and if it was on, say, something that's already happened, we can't go back. But if you're saying about your children, you want to alleviate it, there's a couple of channels that we have that are here that you can see it on screen. But the big advice I'd say to people would be just is to actually speak to an individual and get your own case worked out, find out what type of liability you have, and then walk through a solution if there is one. The gifting the money one, though, is a very good one. You know, you put money in trust for them or put money in an account for them, do it on a yearly basis or on a monthly basis. If you're married, Mary, if yourself and your husband, you could actually give 6,000 euros, 3,000 from mom and 3,000 from dad, hypothetically, and you could build up a very healthy nest egg that you could gift it them at some point in time, and there's no inheritance tax on it.
Okay, so and there's certain other plans here that we can see here, the Section 73, Section 72, life of another policy. Get married, Neil. What does that mean?
Ellen, okay. Financial planning is financial planning, and I'm not romantic, but one way that if you're seeing somebody and you guys are living together for a long period of time, something happens to either of you, in the eyes of the Irish law, you're treated as strangers. Okay, so if you remember on the previous screen, there's the 16250, the group C, you'd actually be treated as a stranger. But if you get married, there's no inheritance tax and transfer of assets.
Okay, so if you're cohabiting with somebody, not the most romantic of reasons to get married, Neil, but it may make financial sense to do so.
It may make financial sense,
Okay.
Yeah. There might be other reasons why, obviously, but look, it's something that's a way of getting around that nasty tax that should be there. So
Absolutely. Look, just moving on, another couple of questions. So Maureen from the HSC asks, if you retire early, what are you entitled to from the government? And can you get your pension in lump sum then, or does she have to wait until she's 66?
Really good question. Okay, so if she does retire early, there may be a way that she could take it early, depending on the scheme she's on. There may be a cost neutral penalty. And from an entitlements perspective, there's actually a number of them, I'll be honest, and there's so many of them. I've only illustrated a couple here on the screen here. But one thing I would say to Maureen is to contact citizensinformation.ie, okay, and they'd be able to help her out what she'd be able to claim, what type of allowances she'd be entitled to get. Now I've sent my own mother to these guys, and she swears by them that they're more efficient than me. And she said they have to make an appointment. Unlike me, I'm always busy. I'm very hard to get. All this stuff I always hear. But she was able to make an appointment, go in, sit down. They walked her through what she could claim, and she swears by them. So I have her here, and
Yeah, very good. And, you know, I suppose with the feedback we get from our clients is that, look, the really excellent information that we find we get from these sources, you know. Okay, so I suppose, Neil, let's move on to the contributory state pension. So a question here from Arthur in the HSC. Can I claim both UK and Irish state pension?
It's a good question, okay, and my understanding of it, yes, you would, as long as you got full stamps built up in both different jurisdictions, and no more than if somebody worked in Australia, some work in Canada, some work in the US. As long as you've got built up enough stamps in that jurisdiction, there should be now, obviously, from a taxation perspective, where the income is actually being paid into, there may be an income perspective, a tax liability. But from a pension perspective, if you built up the right stamps in that jurisdiction, I don't understand why you wouldn't.
There's no reason why you can't claim both.
I can't see, no. But in Ireland, though, as well, again, this is something which comes up by people. Am I going to be entitled to a state pension? To be honest with you, we don't know. Okay, what I would say is, though, is get your copy of your contribution statement from mywelfare.ie, and these guys would be able to send you a statement. They'd be able to let you know if you're going to be entitled to a pension or not. If you're not, might get a full pension, might actually get a pro rata pension based on stamps that you may have built up before. So
yeah, and again, usually we find that, you know, these sources of information very, very useful, and to do this in plenty of time in the run up to your retirement, again, so you know all your ducks are in a row by the time you get there. And that was a question from Claire from the PRAI. You know, she's a question around qualifying for the state pension. So I suppose, you know, 10 years minimum stamps is the requirement. Contributory state pension, this is the full rate, Neil. If you qualify for the full rate, this is the current rate at the moment.
Correct. And also what we've illustrated here is a qualifying adult rate. Now, this is means tested, okay? I just want to put it up there, but it is something that somebody may be entitled if they've got a dependent adult at home with them. But again, further information where you get this is on citizensinformation.ie. There's a full list of the other entitlements, and you can make an appointment and come in and they'll walk you through if there are other benefits that you could be claiming. If you don't ask, you won't be given them. So if it asks you to.
Okay, great. So look, what other factors can affect someone's potential income in retirement, Neil, just in your experience?
Other factors I see, Ellen, is that other pensions that they've built up from previous employments. If they, again, as I know you mentioned earlier on, the gentleman who had pension from the UK, if they worked abroad somewhere, they've got other pensions that are there. That all might make an effect to what their income is going to be. But I would say, do dig in early. Okay, don't leave this to the last minute. This is something. If you've worked in Australia, just as one as I was there myself, if you're there for a period of time, for in the UK for a number of years, training. If you worked in employment 10, 15 years ago before you joined the public service, you may be entitled to pension benefits that are there, but do the digging early. Find out what's there. You might be able to bring it across. You might be able to put into a plan that's in your own name. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely, because if you can uncover these the earliest you can, it'll have an effect on the decisions that you make towards your own pensions here within the Irish jurisdiction, if there's other income streams available to you. Okay, very good. Neil, hugely popular topic, this next one. Look, Maria from the Department of Education, look, best planning for my income in retirement. Lisa from the HSE, I want information on planning and preparing for retirement financially. Carmel from the County Council, can I afford to retire? So again, very, very topical here. Income is, key for anybody in the run up to retirement, and the day-to-day managing of that. So look, what are your tips, advice around this?
Okay, so to everybody that's was asked those questions, I would say, like, again, in practice, what I would find is when I speak to somebody about it, look, talk about retirement, tell me what you want to see happening, and tell me the type of income that you're going to need to be able to provide that. You usually get a lot of blank faces or unsure, and it's a very difficult question because nobody really knows the answer. But what we sent out in advance of this evening, and I would ask everybody who's asking those questions and everybody here on the call, is to understand what you're actually going to need. Okay, so we have a budget calculator that we sent out. So track what you're actually spending on a month-to-month basis. Have a look, and we're all got our taps now at the moment. We can see our bank statement from the start of the month to the end of the month. Have a look at what you're actually spending on. You might be shocked at what you're actually spending on coffee or what you're spending somewhere, but you'll have an idea, how much you're actually going to actually need. And it's much easier for your financial advisor then to come up with a plan, because it's based on you. It's based on what you're actually going to need, not just a figure picked out of the sky where I think if I get half my income, it's going to be enough. You don't actually really know until you look at under the bonnet and understand how much do we actually need. So then long term as well, obviously you have medium term goals and long term goals, but from a short term perspective, again, knowing what you spend from a month-to-month basis, it's a really, really good guide of understanding what you're going to need.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's, Helena from the HSE, how best to prepare financially to get the best from my pension. So that feeds back into this, what will be the day-to-day expenses and, what's likely to change, not change, increase, etc. So again, feed into the pots that are available to you in return and how long they're supposed to last you as well. Neil, thank you so much for all those nuggets of advice. Really, really insightful pieces of information. But look, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for anyone sitting here tonight? Okay,
so I suppose, look, I think I've alluded to it over a couple of different times where I was saying it's really about finding out what you have. Okay, find out what you have in place, whether it's from previous employments, whether it's from your existing pension benefits. Find out exactly what you have in every sort of pension reserve. Find out what you need. Okay, that's the budget calculator, and that's things like assessing your own sort of objectives yourself, what you're going to want to do, where you're going to want to live. You might want to move abroad. And then the third piece then is set up a plan to do those things. So that would be my...
Okay, so find out what you have, find out what you need /want, and put a plan around it. Okay.
Put a plan in place, a plan, not a policy.
Sounds simple, Neil. Sounds very simple. Great. Well, listen, thanks again for coming on tonight and giving us just, I suppose, a snapshot view of what's going on out there and some tips for everyone sitting here tonight. So look, we're going to move on, folks. I just want to kind of talk to you about some recent surveys that we were looking into. And this was a survey done by the Retirement Planning Council of Ireland. And a new survey has revealed that 1/3 of people approaching retirement are concerned about how they will spend their time after retiring. And this was done amongst the over 50s, and they revealed the concerns of this age cohort in relation to their later years. A number of themes emerged from these responses, including feeling like they won't have a sense of purpose, financial concerns, and difficulty dealing with a lack of structure. The majority of participants also agreed that the lockdown, COVID-19 pandemic provided some insight into what retirement might be like. Okay, so I know locked down with my husband for all of that length of time led me to believe that I'd probably retire at a different time to him. So I might retire early and he can work on another 6 years. And, you know, when asked what lessons they had learned during the pandemic that might help them to better prepare for their retirement, they emphasize the value of social interaction and everyday routine. Okay, so again, just interesting facts here. 57% adapted their plans for retirement, 33% opting to retire early, and 24% extending their retirement age. So that's my husband not wanting to retire around the same time as me. And the value of spending time with family and friends outside of work. So just useful information, just something to think about, something to get the cogs turning if this is something that you're thinking of doing in the near future. So just moving on, Sarah. So I always like this little picture here. This always kind of reminds me of good journey versus bad journey. So I always imagine myself flying my little plane towards retirement, and my luggage in the back there packed full of different things such as mortgages, my creche fees, school fees, cost of raising my kids, and the kids are all fighting in the back of the plane. So hopefully along the way, my kids will take the hint and parachute off the plane, and my luggage gets a little bit lighter, but I still want the basics, and I want a few nice things in my suitcase. So again, I'm always thinking about, you know, my own retirement date. And what kind of journey do I want? So what do I want when I get there? Do I want a smooth journey with very little turbulence along the way and landing, I suppose, exactly where I want to land? Or do I want a very uncertain journey with a lot of bumps along the way and then I land way off target? So again, just food for thought, folks. What do we want to see for ourselves? Are we on track? Are we not on track? What can we do to prevent these little bumps along the way? Another interesting survey that we looked at, Sarah, this was done by businessworld.ie in conjunction with Standard Life. And the survey, again, people approaching retirement and retirees as well. What does a good retirement look like? So I'm going to open up the chat function here, folks. So just pop in whatever comes into your head. Look, for you, what does a good retirement look like to you? What would you love to see happen for yourself? So just pop in your answers as we go, and then I'll talk to you about the results of the survey then. Chat function open, Sarah?
It's open there, yeah.
Be secure in income, good health, adequate income, good health, freedom to travel off peak, more days golfing, more quality time, family time, health, time for myself, good one, long life, freedom, travel opportunities, freedom from responsibility, brilliant, travel, health and fun, health and well-being, very good, enough money, still progressing in life, a few mini breaks, days to myself, plenty of time for travel, friends, family, good health. Very good. So look, lots of freedom in family, no more rushing, travel and sun, financial security, freedom. Very good. Travel, no work pressure, happy to wake up early, health, good health and independence, good health, time to enjoy the sunshine, good health, travel, lots of interaction with friends, not having to worry about money. Okay. So look, will we have a look, Sarah, at the results of the survey? So the first one was financial comfort. And again, you can see from the answers popping up here, folks, this is very important to a lot of people. Adequate income, doing the things I want to do in retirement, whatever that means for you folks, travel, going for dinner, coffee, a lot more hours to fill during the week. And I suppose, you know, have a think about this from your own situation. What does that mean to you? Financial security, slightly different, but again, really important to a lot of you sitting here tonight. Covering the essentials. So as we know, we spoke about earlier, you know, like the cost of living is increasingly going up, covering the basics, spending a lot more time at home as well, we find, So again, heating bills on the up, and our expenses today, you know, again, we talk to clients about this day in, day out, will still be there when we get to retirement. Now, please God, you know, kids will be out of the house at that stage. Mortgage will be gone at that point. But what other expenses will we have in retirement, and will we have enough to cover those essentials? Looking after the family financially. So again, feeding back into, you know, gifting the kids or wanting to look after them, whatever that means to you, you know, bringing them on holiday, you know, looking after deposits for houses, weddings, whatever it is, whatever is important to you. And I suppose spending time enjoying hobbies. So whatever that is, you know, on the golf course, you know, doing courses, going back to college, whatever it is you want to fill your day. And then finally, having a strong overall sense of purpose. What we find, I suppose, with our clients and clients that have retired is that, you know, in a lot of cases, identity is wrapped up in your occupation. And when you get to retirement, suddenly that stops. Will that have an impact? Will it not? Some people it will, some people it won't. But again, think about that. What are the other things you'd like to see yourself doing in retirement? And interestingly enough, look, I'm not going to go into too much detail on what does a bad retirement look like. I'll just depress you all. But you know, the top two answers were poor physical health was a major concern. You know, again, so you know, looking after yourself in retirement from a health perspective, and the second one was being financially strapped. So if you look at this, the results of the survey, I suppose the top three were linked to finances. So again, what do we need to fund for? What is important for you? Is it travel? Is it, you know, college funds for the kids? Is it looking after your VHI, your health, retirement pot, linking that back in? Is this sufficient? Looking after the family, properties, all of this is filtering its way into when you stop working and filtering into your own retirement plan. So again, folks, it's just something to think about, food for thought, but very interesting findings overall. So look, I'm going to move on to our second panelist for this evening, our lovely Michelle Farrelly.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, Michelle. How are you? Thanks for joining us. So look, folks, Michelle is working with IPF for 5 years and working at a very senior level. Again, a lot of you here will be very familiar with Michelle and her workings with our clients, offering advice, building plans, bringing people from, you know, the start of their journey right through to retirement and beyond. And look, I suppose, Michelle, a very interesting fact about you is that you are related to one of the
Spice Girls. Thank you for reading my financial plan, Ellen. Yeah.
So Michelle, I presume you're which Spice Girl is it, by the way?
Baby Spice.
Baby Spice. So I presume you're offering Baby Spice lots of financial advice at this
I'm
point.
hoping she'll end it the opposite way around now with them royalties. And that's the way I'm hoping it's going to work. Not this
So that's your financial plan.
Exactly. Yes. Hang on.
Very good. Very good. So look, Michelle, we'll just get straight to it, I suppose. You know, the glide path. Okay. Just talk to us about what that is. I presume it's not, you know, anybody taking up ice skating in retirement, but what's under the bonnet of this?
Yeah, so look, I suppose you would have heard Neil and Ellen, and look, even seen the survey results there, speak a lot about the different things that you're going to have to consider in retirement. Okay, and look, the financial aspect of it, that's just one of these pieces. So a couple of years ago, look what we introduced, I think it's about 4 years ago now, we introduced a retirement glide path. And really the idea behind introducing the glide path was that it's a clear track to run on for both you as a client and also us as advisors to make sure that nothing is missed before retirement and all the key decisions you need to make are made with, I suppose, your best interest in mind. So look, it really takes the panic, the stress and the uncertainty out of the retirement journey. Okay. And look, what we normally do, the glide path, the process itself is broken into 4 different stages. Okay. And typically these are carried out over 4 different meetings. So what I'm going to run through now is meetings 1 and 2. And a little bit later on, Jeff's going to speak to you about meetings 3 and 4.
Okay. Very good. Okay. I suppose, Michelle, like I've a good few questions in here. You know, so meeting one really would be, you know, you've done the hard work, you've built up your pots, and I suppose then looking at what you can do before you get to D-Day, essentially.
That's it. It's really consolidating the plan. So look, we'll cover the run up to retirement, what options you have, what other opportunities do you have to maybe maximize things like tax-free money, any additional opportunities you may have to save tax, and also any options you have to just maybe improve that income in retirement if that's the areas that are of concern to you. What we also have a look at is how we best manage those plans after you retire. And again, look, Jeff's going to go into a little bit more detail around the different options that you do have, but just making sure that any of the key decisions that you need to make, that you've got, I suppose, a clear plan in place. And look, we'll help guide you through how best to make these decisions that are going to suit your own individual plans. So look, it's very client specific, it's very individually centered. So these plans are different case by case.
Yeah, so I was just going to say there's a lot of options here. I presume it's not one size fits all.
No,
like,
absolutely
take every one of these boxes. Okay, okay.
That's it.
Meeting two, then linking on from what Neil was discussing earlier in relation to life cover, then, you know.
That's it. Yeah, it's really just having, again, look, doing the discovery, having a look at what provisions you have, and having a look at, are these going to stay sufficient in retirement? Are they still going to do the job that you need them to do when you do retire? Is everybody you want to see looked after going to stay looked after in the way that you want to see them looked after? I suppose, look, this might include things like additional life insurance policies. It may include areas of estate planning. Again, it's very individually based. So we'll have a chat with you during the meeting just to establish, look, there is any need to have a look at these options.
Okay, very good. So look, moving on then, loads and loads of questions then. Mahmood from Cork, look, regular income, how can I improve? Maura from the HSE is asking, look, with not having full service, what are my financial entitlements? So big thing on, I suppose, income, but also then just coming up short on the service. So again, can you talk to us a little bit about that, Michelle?
Yeah, shortfall in service. Look, it's a big one. It's one that we come across very regularly. And I suppose it's one of the bigger queries that we have with people conscious about the impact that a shortfall in service is going to have on their income, their lump sums. And I know Neil would have spoke a little bit about the differences on the different schemes and the impact it can have. But what I'm going to do is just run through some of the different scenarios. So look, number one, what we find a lot is you might have started working late. So number of different reasons. You may have a certain amount of time worked private sector. You may have taken time off to rear kids, started working a little bit later on, fairly self-explanatory. But look, it's something we come across. Retiring early.
Yeah, Naveed from the HSC. Look, Michelle, pros and cons of early retirement. What is it?
Look, this is the big one. I think we'd all agree that if I suppose we could put a plan in place for everybody who wanted to retire early, we'd be probably all well retired at this stage now for the amount of people that ask us. But look, there's lots of different reasons why you might want to retire early. Okay, look, you might have parents that have retired early. They may have had a good, I suppose, experience in retirement, had a good plan in place. You may have spouses, as you have said earlier, Ellen, that you're going to retire before your husband, that want to retire a little bit earlier, and you might get jealous and want to join them on the boat. Or look, I suppose just considering a lot of the occupations and the demographic of the people that we have on tonight, in some cases, it may not be physically feasible to work on. Okay, so look, to 66 or 70, like it just may not be within the realms of possibility to be able to continue doing the work that you do if it's done, I suppose, on a physical requirement to be able to maintain the work. Okay, so what our job is as financial planners is that when you reach that point that physically, mentally, emotionally, you're ready to retire, that financially you're in a position to be able to do so.
Okay. And so we see a lot of this, Michelle, say with, you know, HSE workers, guards, nurses, stressful situations, fast paced, you know, a lot opting to have the option to retire early where possible.
And a lot more during COVID as well. I suppose people have really seen the toll that it's taken and want to have the option that, look, if something like that arises again, that they're in a position to be able to make active financial plans, make financial decisions. And I suppose, look, it's just about having that option of having the flexibility.
Very good. And I suppose working abroad speaks for itself, Michelle.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, UK, Australia, it's a typical one that we'd find a lot of people spend a lot of time working there, returned back, are now resuming work in the public sector, might have a little bit of a gap there in the shortfalls.
Okay, so Mary from the HSC, look, I have always job shared. What are my entitlements?
Yeah, so again, look, Neil would have gone through it earlier on, but look, let's take an example of, was it Mary you said?
Mary, yeah.
Mary. Yeah. So let's say, for example, Mary's worked 40 years in the HSC, okay? But on that basis, she worked part-time for all of those 40 years. what that would mean for Mary is that on retirement, she will be credited with 20 years. Okay, so it's a full-time equivalent. So it is going to have an impact ultimately on the pension and the lump sum that she's going to be paid on retirement. So again, maybe in Mary's interest, just to sit down, have a look at what options she can, and she can take out to put a plan in place to counteract that shortfall.
Okay. I have a question from Maria just on our next point there, career breaks. So look, they are available, but also as well, does that affect the scheme you're on if you take a career break, Michelle?
So it can. I suppose the short answer is no, but I suppose I will caveat it and say that you will need to get confirmation from your employer that the time off has been granted as a career break. Okay. Right. So I suppose any other breaks in service, it may mean that if you return on a different scheme, you will be entered into the most recent scheme that you enter back in. And so look, just be very important, guys. A lot of people get caught out on that. Get it in writing. If it's something that you're going to take up, make sure you have your ducks in a row and have yourself covered. So
to retain the initial scheme that you were on. Okay, now non-pensionable employment. This is a very interesting one.
This is a funny one. So look, as Neil would have spoke about earlier on, in most cases within the public sector, your pension's based on your final salary. Okay, so that's a typical scenario. In certain occupations, there can be a lot of overtime, and this income may not be considered for your pension. So look, some examples of these types of occupations may be medical scientists, nurse, guards. We see a lot of this creeping in. I suppose at the minute, where the options lie is that there's kind of two rules at play when it comes to non-pensionable income. So we have our superannuation, which typically considers only your basic salary for pension purposes. But then we have revenues rules. And revenue actually allow you to use all of your earnings when making considerations for tax-free money in particular in retirement. Okay, so if you do have any of this non-pensionable employment, there may be additional opportunities for you to boost that tax-free lump sum in retirement. Okay.
You have your 40 years, Michelle, you have your service banked.
Absolutely.
There may be a window of opportunity there to bring that up.
Absolutely. And look, there's, I suppose, with certain rules and things we can go back 10 years. So it may not be a case that you're working a lot of overtime now or at retirement. If you've worked overtime in the past, we may be able to use that income and uplift and give you some options then to get a little bit more tax-free money out, I should say.
Very good. Okay. And then our last point then would be, I suppose, parental leave, extended mat leave. So I suppose that speaks for itself really, Michelle.
Yeah, it does. I suppose the only thing to know, and I do know a lot of people kind of query on this really applies to any unpaid leave beyond the standard public sector paid allowances that you have. So any time that you spent off where you're not being paid, that would be deemed as kind of unpaid, non-pensionable parental or extended maternity leave. So it doesn't count towards your pension.
Very good. So again, all of these have an impact on your service. Any unpaid leave that you might have in the background is going to eat into that kind of 40-year potential. Okay, I'm going to keep it moving, Michelle. I'm just conscious of for everybody. So Joe from the Education and Training Board, I have 20 years. Would I be better off with ABCs or buying back years? Good question.
Yeah, great question. And I suppose, look, to answer that question, it's really a case-by-case basis again. There's a couple of options that you have. And so the important thing is just to weigh them all up before you jump into and dive into it, because some are going to suit some, others are going to suit others. But look, what we might have a look at is the different types of purchasing back years, because there's a difference there as well. Okay.
Yeah, so temporary and notional service. So like, what's the difference for anyone sitting here tonight, Michelle?
Yeah, so look, purchasing back temporary or training years, okay, these are years that you've actually physically spent working in the public sector in some capacity. Okay, so a lot of where we'd find this applicable is, say, nurses. So nurses doing their student years in the HSC, they may have an opportunity to buy back that service. Okay, and that service, it's very good value to buy back. And I would encourage you, look, consider it. Have a chat with HR, get the quotes for it. And typically what we find is the value for money as versus kind of what it pays back in retirement. It's a really good option to have a look at. It's quite lucrative as far as what it can pay back. So definitely worth considering.
Has to represent good value for money for your buck. Okay.
Absolutely, that's it as well. So next thing is purchase of notional years of service. So this is probably quite typical, and I suppose more typical than the temporary service, the training years. But these are years that you haven't physically spent working in the public sector. So if we go back to our example earlier on, I suppose Mary, who was job sharing, I think for 20 years. Okay, so that would mean Mary's years of service, she may have an option to buy back some of those years that she hasn't spent physically working. Okay. In this case, you'd get a quote from HR. Okay. So you would make an agreement, and that would set out how you pay back the money to purchase back these years of service. Okay. Now, look, I suppose it's something worth getting the quotes on, but just to go through a few things, look, there's tax relief offered on them. So it can present a good value plan. But from what we've heard, it can be quite expensive. And I suppose a lot of you might have heard that speaking to each other. I suppose you do find it's quite an expensive option. So it might take a lot of time to actually claw back the money that you've paid to purchase these years of service in retirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, Michelle, essential to really stress test whether it's representing good value for money for your book now and in retirement as well.
Absolutely. And is it going to fix the problem that you may have or the concern that you have? Because look, in a lot of cases, it may not even plug the financial gap that you're going to have. So with the best will in the world, you may have your 40 years, but actually having those additional years of service, the extra pension it's going to pay you, it's not going to solve the issue that you have as far as it not being enough to give you the income that you need in retirement. Okay. So look, again, we can have a chat with you about weighing up the options.
Brilliant. Okay. So then, purchase of additional voluntary contributions, I suppose this is where we can potentially step in, but talk to us about, what's the flexibility with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, this is an extra contribution that you can decide to pay. As you said, look, it's a flexible contribution option. So you can decide what's going to make sense from you with a bit of advice from an advisor as to how much you pay in. But it's essentially money paid into a fund that you can then use to supplement your benefits in retirement. And you have an option as to how you supplement those benefits. So you can use it to maximize your tax-free lump sum. You can use it to increase a financial shortfall, so increase your income. Or for those of you, look, like you said earlier on, that have your 40 years that may not actually have a financial shortfall there, you can simply use it just to give you an extra stream of income in retirement. And the other thing is you can use it to do all three. So again, depending on how much you can manage to get into the pot, you can use these. They're very, very flexible and you can use them to to target different areas of shortfalls in retirement.
Yeah, and just to say as well, Michelle, I suppose, again, not one size fits all. In some scenarios, these are not suitable for some individuals.
There's things to consider on the ABCs as well. I suppose, look, like the above, there's tax relief offered on them, which can make them quite a good value for money plan to take out. They are invested, but there's charges associated with the ABCs again. So look, again, it's important to sit down, have a look and make sure it's actually going to give you a viable solution in retirement. It's going to, as you say, represent good value for money before you commit into doing them.
Very common theme running through all of these three has to represent good value for money, and then do nothing.
Do nothing. Yeah, do nothing is it's not a silly answer. It's not a rude answer or a facetious answer. Look, in some cases that might be the right option. I know not all of you may be as lucky as me to have a famous relative that you're going to lean on in retirement. But for those of you that do, look, if you've had a look, you've dug under the bonnet, you've had a look at the benefits, you're happy with your pension, you're happy with your lump sum, you don't see an issue or there's no areas of concern there, you don't need to do anything. And look, I think that's the best thing to do. And I'll speak on behalf of everybody here. If we don't think any of the above is a good option for you to look at, we'll advise you as much. We won't advise you to take out any plans that aren't going to make sense or we don't see as good value for money.
Okay, very good. Now, how can I make the most of my ABC plan? Maureen from the NRH wants to know, Michelle.
Yeah, so look, I suppose there's a couple of different factors to consider with the ABC as far as the logistics and kind of how they're paid. So you can pay them through your salary. So they're paid through your wages. So they're very streamlined, okay? So you can decide again on a flexible amount that's going to suit you. And from that amount then, like working with an advisor, we'll establish what kind of fund you need to build up and we can work through how much you want to contribute on a regular basis, okay? So it's a really efficient way to save money. There's tax relief at source. So look, this is a big one. I suppose there's no go near revenue, trying to dig through the waves of revenue online and trying to work out where you're going. It's all done for you at source. Okay. So look, that's where the heavy lifting comes in. And you can make lump sum contributions as well. So throughout the year, I suppose you may decide that there's a set amount that you're comfortable with, that's affordable from a fortnightly basis or a monthly basis. But at the end of the year, you have an extra few bob there. You want to lump it into the pension. You want to have a look at ways of minimizing the tax. You can do that at the end of the year as well. And you can actually do a combination of all of these. So you can do lump sums and regular contributions as well. So they're really, really flexible.
Okay, so just before we wrap up, Michelle, could you give us an example of both, I suppose, for anybody sitting here tonight?
Yeah, so look, this is quite a typical example, and this is just the way, I suppose, making lump sum contributions, how you can turn your 20,000 investment into 28,000 using an ABC vehicle. Okay, so in this scenario, look, a certain person would have paid in 20,000, and this assumes a higher rate taxpayer. Okay, so this is somebody who's paying 40% tax. In this case, had they paid the 20,000 in, they would be refunded 8,000 in tax relief. Okay, and when they retire, they can then draw it back down on the 20,000 that they've invested. Okay, so it's a really lucrative way of trying to claw back a bit of tax, but also building up an extra return for your money.
And we're assuming loads here. We're assuming that, you know, they have the allowance and they have the salary scope to do a lump sum such as this. Okay. Regular premiums. Can you just walk us through an example of that?
Yeah. So a regular, look, again, the regular premiums, much like what I said earlier on, they're paid through your pay slip. Once the amount that you've agreed to is contributed in, the taxman adds a certain amount that you'll see it directly come from your PAYE. That money is then invested for you with an opportunity to earn a little bit of growth. So this example here, look, it just shows with a bit of time, which is I think another big theme that we'll see here as well, is looking at this with enough time and giving yourself enough time to build up the plans, how you can build up 100,000 in ABC. I think, look, the biggest thing to note on this, guys, beyond the growth, which you'll see, it's quite marginal, relatively speaking, is it's the tax relief that you save. Versus, like what we spoke about earlier on, the inflation rates, the cost of living. Look, that kind of return you're not going to get on deposit. Again, it does need to make sense, but look, that's 37,500 that otherwise would have been paid into the pit of the taxman's pocket, as it goes now away. So any ways that we can claw that back, look, it's definitely something worth considering and having a look at.
The key part here, I suppose, is there are a few reliefs that we can avail of, but it does have to make financial sense. But like that, this is the pot of money that you could be clawing back from the revenue dark hole into a retirement account, but only if it makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Very good, Michelle. Thank you so much for all those nuggets of advice, for taking the time to come on here this evening. But look, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for anyone sitting here tonight?
Yeah, so look, I suppose number one would be, look, we have this glide path, engage with the process, engage with each of the meetings to get the very most out of the consultations itself. The next thing I would say is do your discovery. Okay, look, there's a certain amount that we will do as part of the fact finding, but look, there's a certain amount that we will require for you to do as well. Go off, do your homework, do a bit of digging around as well there, so we can help best make those financial decisions a little bit easier for you. And last thing I'd say is start early. So the earlier you start, the better. And look, the easier it is and the less painful it is overall to get you where you want to land without too much stress or too much of a rigmarole to get you there in the long run.
And, you know, the alternative is have baby spice up your sleeve, Michelle.
Have baby spice up your sleeve. Yeah, up the sleeve. There she is.
Very good. Thanks again, Michelle. And look, we'll keep things moving again. I'm just conscious of time. So I'm going to introduce you now, folks, to our last speaker of this evening, Mr. Jeff Lau. And Jeff is going to talk to us about our options for your retirement income. So Jeff is working with IPF for the last 8 years, senior financial planner, but also heavily involved with retiring clients, again, taking them from infancy of the plan right through to retirement and beyond, and also heavily invested in the training of our teams in IPF. Interesting fact about Jeff is prized and known to have the best hair in the office, folks. So I know there's going to be lots of objections here from the teams, but how do you feel about that, Jeff?
Thanks for the introduction. I don't know what to say, but it's probably true. Anyway.
So look, Jeff, thanks for coming on this evening. Michelle spoke about, you know, part 1 and 2 of the glide path. So look, what should our clients be aware of at this point?
Okay, good question, Ellen. So yeah, so I'm covering the meeting 3, right? So we're at retirement stage, right? So this stage is actually one of my favorite parts of the job. So this is when our clients can finally, get your hands on the money, after all the saving, the planning, this is when the plan comes to realization. So, and then you can really just start to decide how you want to spend the money, so it's a really nice part of the job for us, at this stage, all the planning, the lead up has been done as outlined by, Michelle and Neil. So, it's really important that at this point, our clients have a clear understanding of what's involved in the claims process. So, even just today, what we would do, I would have arrange a consultation to outline what the options are for drawdown, what forms are required, what information is needed to complete the claim. Because as you know, Ellen, like there's going to be at this point when we're drawing things down, there's a good bit of backwards and forwards, depending on the information that's needed, the employer details and so forth. It can take a bit of time. I'm sure maybe some of our clients on the webinar today are probably maybe aware of. So it's really important to be prepared and organized to make things at the drawdown stage as smooth as possible.
Yeah, and Jeff, ideally, like I suppose, if somebody had been engaging in the process, like meeting one, meeting two, probably at this point would have a very clear idea what direction they're going with the funds. But like, how far out in advance would you like to see somebody in the run up to their own retirement?
Ideally, I would say like 6 months. I would say 6 months, then we can really get all our ducks in line, and we know where we're at. We know what's going to be required, and get things in place and moving nice and smoothly. Definitely.
Okay. So we're going to move on, Jeff. Look, loads and loads of interest around this. Mary from Port how can I use the ABC to supplement my lump sum shortfall? Fintan from Garda Síochána, look, inquiring about ABC planning. Colette from the HSC, how are the ABCs that I've accumulated paid out? And will they be taxed? So a lot of interest around this. And as you said, pots are built up. Where do we go next with this, Jeff?
Right. Okay. So first things first, like that we would take our clients through with is to maximize the tax-free lump sum as stated there, right? So again, as Michelle noted, like this is the most tax efficient way to get your hands on your ABC funds. So, make sure, have a look at where you're at service-wise with the non-pensionable earnings. If you've got additional service over and above the 40, depending on your age, again, there's a few different angles to maximize that. So just make sure you're aware of that and talk to, myself or one of the advisors at IPF.
Okay, so to use the previous example, so, Mary was job sharing, she might have a significant shortfall in a lump sum. She's short 20,000, that comes off the top of the ABC pot, so 100,000 in the fund, that comes off the top. Options with the balance then. Yeah,
exactly. Come straight off the top, and then next question is what do we do with the balance, right? So there's essentially the three options that we have there, right? So the first thing that we can see there is to purchase an annuity, right? And what that is, this is a pension payment that guarantees to pay you a particular amount, a set amount every month for every year for the rest of your life. Okay. Now, I guess if you're familiar with the pension industry, like annuities, they're not as common as they were, let's say 15, 20 years ago. Reasons being, from a flexibility point of view, and the rates aren't as good value, to touch on that point that you noted earlier with Michelle. The rate isn't good, so the income that you're getting, it wouldn't be particularly high, or maybe not at a level that you're satisfied with. So it could take a long time to break even. So just something to maybe be aware of if you're looking at an annuity option.
Okay. So this is where we're really tuning into day-to-day income, what's going to pay the bills, and
what income do you need?
Does it represent good value for you? Okay, very good.
So moving on then to the second point, right, to the ARF, the approved retirement fund, right? So this would be probably our most common option for the retirement drawdown side of things. And essentially, what is it? Like, this is a post-retirement fund. So after retirement, post-retirement, from which you can take a flexible and gradual withdrawal from. You're in control. You can take an income that suits your needs and objectives, depending obviously on the size of the fund that we have there. You can choose what sort of income that you can take, and it's flexible, so you can change as well. So because of that flexibility, definitely the most popular option that we would have here. And I have a slide in a second, which I'll go into to a bit more detail around that. And then the option 3 is a taxable lump sum. So what that is, Ellen, is this is where maybe a client would take all of the fund and have it paid to them. Obviously it's subject to tax in USC. But if you're in the high bracket, or depending on the size, it may, you may be paying half of it back in tax. So, it might suit for small balances, but generally, wouldn't be advised from a tax efficiency point of view. Again, maybe something to have a look at.
Revenue rubs his hands with glee when he sees something like this from a large pot. Typically the profile of our clients, 98 to 99% of them opt for the ARF option. Can you talk to me about why that is?
Definitely. Like with that, the profile that you've mentioned there, all of our clients, they have their main pension scheme from the job or the civil service, or wherever it may be. And in line with their needs and objectives, then like the approved retirement definitely seems to tie in gives the most suitability around that. It's a flexible arrangement as outlined there. It allows you to remain invested. And the big thing is around the control. You can change the way you draw down the fund as and when you wish. Okay.
Yeah. Because Michael from Sligo is asking, look, how do I know how much to take out each year? And ARF in brackets. So good question.
Yeah, excellent question. Like, again, what we would generally find is, when we're doing your retirement drawdown, there is a bit of a transition period. Like, you're adjusting, you're going to be on a lower income and so forth. So, let the dust settle, but then, set your income, let's say at the minimum would be maybe 4%, for example, right? But then once you have a clear idea in terms of what you need or you want to take, then you can adjust accordingly. So the last point there, you have to take 4% between 60 and 70. Like, I would have a lot of clients that they might take a set amount each month to bring their monthly income to a level that is comfortable for them. Or they may take a lump sum once a year to pay the VHI bill,
Very good land for January. Yeah.
Or pay for a holiday or whatever it may be. So again, it's very individual specific what needs and objectives that you have. But I think, again, the key thing around the ARF is the flexibility around that.
Okay, so again, to link it back to Neil's point earlier with the budget planner, so I suppose the hardest piece for this is to figure out what you want to use this for and what it's going to provide you with in return.
Yeah. No, definitely. So, have a clear idea of what your needs are, and then, implement the withdrawals accordingly. One of the interesting things there, just on the investment growth side of things, like the ARF, it is a fund that remains invested, right? So, it can still grow. So like a typical ideal, a really positive situation that we would see with a lot of our clients would be, let's say they started with 100,000 in the plan. Over the next 5 years, they've withdrawn 30,000, let's say, for example. Okay, so they've physically been paid 30,000 from the plan, but the value of the plan is 20,000 because it's managed to replenish and have positive growth. So, that's a really good outcome. And then it just means that there's a fund there that's going to last longer and give more options from a drawdown point of view.
Okay, so the tax-free growth really, I suppose, keeps itself ahead of itself in some circumstances.
It can do, and that would be the ideal scenario there. Obviously, bear in mind that the income that you take from the ARF is obviously subject to tax. So again, make sure you're having a conversation with ourselves, or if you have an accountant, just so that keeps you right in terms of what brackets, as Neil would have touched on in his slides earlier, about where you're going to fall from a tax point of view. There are certain parameters that you have to take. So 4% would be a minimum that you have to take. So again, and depending on which ARF provider we use, there would be certain parameters from the top end as well. But again, a lot of flexibility would be the big thing I would be making our clients aware of. So.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. And again, we'll just briefly touch on this, I suppose, the ARF versus annuity. What's the pros and cons of both?
Overwhelmingly, the ARF would be the most common, right? Because the main points being around the flexible income, you remain invested. And the big thing there about the leave and inheritance, right? So this is, for a lot of our clients, is really important. Like, what happens if I die? So if you have the ARF, and there's a good portion of money still there, it will pass to your next of kin or to your estate. Yeah, it's still your money, and someone's going to get the benefit of it there. So that's really important there. Again, the option is you can still use it to purchase an annuity at a later date. If rates change and it was worthwhile to do, you could still do that. Obviously, you have to be aware that there is an investment risk. There's an investment element there. So it's something that you have to be comfortable with. But we will chat to you about what the funds available are and what suits your attitude to risk. And then the bomb out risk, what that means, that alludes to, obviously, it's a finite amount of money. So, if you're taking large withdrawals, it will run out eventually. So, that's something that has to be managed in line with what you want the fund to do for you. Just the points on the annuity. Again, once you've committed to annuity, there's no flexibility around that. It's quite set in stone there. And it's not an investment piece. So again, it's just it is what it is, kind of thing. The opposite with the inheritance side of things. So, there are some factors that you can tie into an annuity option so that it's guaranteed to pay for a certain amount of time, but that's going to have an impact on the rate. So again, just going back to that value point that Ellen, that you mentioned earlier, is it good or not? Does it suit? There's no encashment option. So again, it's quite set in stone in terms of what the option is. There's no investment risk. So again, some people might like that they know exactly where they're at. So again, just be aware of what your own objectives and needs are from the fund. And obviously it is a guaranteed income for life. So you don't have that bomb out risk. So it will last you until you die. But again, is that income at a level which you're happy with? So we need to maybe flesh that out.
I'm going to keep moving things along, Jeff. Again, very lots of questions coming in. Will ABC and retirement lump sum sustain my day-to-day living? How to manage funds and invest a lump sum? Sean from Department of Social Protection. Big topic for this evening is, will I have enough to live on? How can I manage my funds, pots that I've accumulated in retirement?
Okay. Good question, Ellen. So really this would be like a meeting that we would arrange, once the retirement is settled in most cases, right? And it's around the investment side of things of your funds. Once the cruises booked, the new cars bought, and bits and bobs have been done in the house, right? So what we see at this stage, right, is what we would refer to as an asset flip, right? Now, that's not me doing a somersault of a table or anything like that, right? What we mean by that, right, is after you retire, right, your deposits and your cash holdings you have tend to increase because you've had your lump sums, all those nice lump sums, right? But at the same time, your income decreases dramatically. So for a lot of people, that's going to require some management and some structure. So what we like to do is, have a meeting and have a look at what your short, medium, and long-term needs are, so that you've got your money in places that are going to suit your needs and objectives. So there could be a mix of deposits, bank, credit union accounts, and so forth. But then there could be an area for investments as well, which might work your money a little bit harder in the long run. Okay.
Just moving on, Jeff, and thanks for that. But Alan from Roscommon, look, how can I make my money keep up with inflation? This is massive topic, in the previous year gone by, and just talk to us about what people need to be thinking about here on the call tonight.
Yeah, really topical at the moment. So I guess from an investment point of view, there's two main areas to be aware of. Obviously, we're in a very low deposit interest rate time, as we can see here, from 2008, when you were getting 5.5% in the banks, which is attractive. Whereas now in 2023, it's less than 1% that we're getting from the banks. So first thing to be aware of is that we're in a very low deposit area. So in terms of, a lot of people, when they have the lump sums and they're talking to us, it's about, I do want to get a positive return and I want my money to be working for me. So again, is less than 1% working for you? I don't know. So we might need to have
is definitely suffering from a dose of shrinkflation for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So then moving on to the next slide, right? The second main aspect that we have to be aware of is around inflation. So, we're in a very high inflation environment time that we're in at the moment. When we say inflation, right, I'm sure most people know what it is, but what is it? It's the rate at which the price of goods and services increase. And why is it important? It's because the inflation, as it's noted there, it's a silent thief, right? It reduces the real purchasing power, the real buying power of your money. So just on the slide there, you can see the price of a Bewley's cappuccino in 2003 was €2.40. So today it costs €4.70. So that's an average increase of 3% each year. So,
and Jeff, that's before you go into your venti matcha green tea frappuccino made with soy milk.
That's your drink. That's your drink, Ellen. I know that's your drink. We call that the Ellen. So I guess, on that point, right, it's just really important that we look at ways to try and maintain the real value of our money. So again, we can see here at the moment, going from 1981, obviously that was the last time that we really had high inflation rates. So in most people's in recent times anyway, we can see that it's been quite low. 2019, it was less than 1%. But then now in 2023, we're up at 8.5% inflation, So again, your €100 today, what's it going to get for you in 5 years' time? Your VHI 5 years ago, your pint of Guinness, your pint of milk, all that kind of thing. We all can feel it. We all know, and we can see it, the real impact of that.
Your electricity bills, everything, loaf of bread, etc. You know, and I suppose we're in the perfect storm combined with the low deposit rate. So I suppose, Jeff, what's the overall impact of inflation over time?
Yeah, well, if you can, this is a really good slide just to visualize that, right? So if we were starting with 50,000, right, and let's just take, you know, the red line, the 37,000 there, that's at 3%. So never mind talking about your 8.5% at the moment. At 3% over the next 10 years, your real value is 37,000. And in 15 years, it's 32,000 of what your 50,000 could buy. So you can see there that if we leave our money in the banks or whatever, you know, that is not growing, we're losing real value of money. So when, from an investment point of view, you know, of course, we have a lot of our clients would be like, listen, I want to have low risk approach to investment, and that's absolutely understandable because everybody, it's a psychological connection to their money. We want to have some kind of, you know, security there, right? But in terms of, from an investment point of view, you're actually losing money straight off the bat because, you know, it's not growing, you're not maintaining the real value. So that's something that we would have a really kind of deep conversation with you in terms of, like, realistically, you've got X amount on deposit. You've done your 1 to 3 year short-term bucket, you've done your 3 to 5 year medium-term bucket, and you've still got a decent amount, you know, left over for that 5 years plus. It might be worthwhile having a look to maybe complement some of your holdings with an investment to get your money working harder for you. Again, it might suit some people, it might not suit other people, but it's worth, particularly with the kind of conditions that we're in at the moment. And there's some value to be had because markets are perhaps at an undervalued stage as well, that, you know, there could be growth potential there as well.
Okay. Well, look, Jeff, that's lots of really, really good nuggets of information again, and thank you so much for your participation this evening. So before we wrap up, what would be your, you know, your pieces of advice for everyone sitting here this evening?
Yeah, so I talked to some of my colleagues there, so we put this little list there together. So, you know, the first one there would be around planning. So just, you know, having a clear idea around what you need and when you need it. And the second one would be around, you know, pulling together all of your arrangements that you have. What pensions do you have? What assets, what savings accounts do you have? Just so that we know what we're working with there from a planning point of view. And then have a look at what you can do now, if you're at retirement, or if you're 5 years out from retirement, or if you're at retirement. So if you're before retirement, you know, should you be maximizing your lump sum, your ABC contributions? Have you done that? Okay, do we look at an investment option just now? Or if we're at retirement, like we said, you know, do we have excess funds that we could park maybe over the longer term? Okay. Next one would be around the buckets. So again, that's your short, your medium, and your long-term buckets, not your bucket and spade at the beach. But so again, it's a good exercise to maybe do and sit down and see what you need your money for. Fifth point would be around reviewing those buckets. Again, circumstances might change. You know, needs, objectives may change. So again, make sure you're reviewing them on an ongoing basis. So like, you might be retiring, you get your lump sum, your spouse might retire next year, you've got more lump sums coming in. So again, just make sure you're refreshing your plan. And then last point there would be around the legacy. Again, something happens to yourself if you die or whatever, then, you know, who do you want your money to go to? Do we need to put it into trust, or what kind of arrangements suit after you pass away?
Yeah,
so forth.
Really
they would be the main bits.
Really good points there, Jeff. You know, and you know, part 6 there again, you know, it's tuning into these points before we get to retirement. So key decisions we can make this side of it, you know, rather than, I suppose, going into retirement and then trying to figure these things out. So again, really, really important that the plan runs to your track and runs to your own individual needs. So thank you so much, Jeff, for taking the time to come on tonight. So folks, we're nearly there. And again, thanks for all, you know, the participation and involvement on the chats as well. So look, just a reminder for anybody that's interested, Sarah, we have an investment seminar coming up on Wednesday, the 26th of April at 7 p.m. So again, just tuning into, you know, what the previous contributors were saying, ask yourself if it's a case that you're looking to even just, you know, dip the toe into investment, or just come along and have a listen if you're toying with the idea. How much do you have available? What time frame? Do you have to invest this money? What are your primary objectives with this lump sum? Will you need to draw an income from it? What access, if any, will you need? So we've some really, really good speakers. You know, we've good bodies coming in, and then we've got speakers from New Ireland Assurance as well. So again, we're kind of removed from the advice piece here. These are people working with these funds day in, day out. So really, really good, solid advice, independent advice as well. So anybody that's looking at this as an option, I'd encourage you all to attend, come along, have a listen, you know, write down your questions, and then we can explore options and avenues after that. So to register, email webinar@ipf.ie, and then Sarah, our lovely Sarah, will send you the link to get involved. So I suppose moving on then, Sarah, again, for those of you that are coming up to retirement or have retired or considering it, we have a retirement help desk that will, you know, typical queries we would get day in, day out from our clients would be, look, taxation on ABC drawings. How do I draw an income from my ARF? Am I invested in the most appropriate fund? Can I switch? So this is something we need to review on an ongoing basis. You know, markets change, your appetite, attitude to risk can change as well. What are my options? Savings, gratuity, investment opportunities, and a big one here, an inheritance tax liability. Sometimes when we sit with clients, there can be a very serious liability that could be triggered if they passed away in the morning. So again, this is something that we can talk to you about. This is our lovely Blóithín on the phone here. It's a very popular service. It's completely free and it can be used as often as you wish. So again, just something in place for you to consider for the future. So look, before we wrap up with the competition, I just want to thank Sarah Connolly as well for your input. But what is Ireland's current rate of inflation? So if you can pop your answers in the chat box. First answer in, guys, will win the One for All voucher. Okay. So Sarah, very quick.
Flying in already, flying in. Let me just see who was first in. So. Now it looks like there's a Ronnie, I think.
Ronnie?
Yeah, it looks like Ronnie was in first. So well done,
okay.
Ronnie.
Ronnie, congratulations. And we'll be in touch with you to you know, roll out the One for All voucher to you. So look, I'd like to thank all the panelists tonight, Sarah in particular, for putting it all together and you know, rolling the slides for us and keeping us on track. To Jeff, thank you very much for your participation. Michelle Farrelly, thank you very much for your participation. And Neil, thank you very much for your participation. And most of all, thank you to you for attending and listening to all the advice that we're offering there. Really, guys, you know, following on from this evening, what's really important, if you want to get in contact and arrange an individual appointment, it's really crucial to look at your own situation. There could be some really good opportunities. We might be able to address any concerns that you might have from any of the previous slides. But, you know, Neil, what is your mantra?
Plan, not a policy, Alan. So it's not just having in place, having a plan for it.
So if we have the right plan, please God, we'll keep it on track. And look, for those of you retiring shortly, I wish you a long and happy retirement. And for those of you planning retirement, I wish you best of luck with the plan. Thank you. Good night and God bless. Take care.
Thanks, Ellen.